It was a cool fall evening, and the smell of grilling meat was in the air. I was having a barbecue at my house and had invited all of my closest friends and neighbors. It was the perfect night for it. And yet, for some reason, it didn't feel perfect to me. I looked at the grill, making sure the temperature was just right, and flipped over a few of the steaks. This was the perfect vantage point to watch the party without anyone noticing that I was staring. "James, these are wonderful," Tom Wilson tells me, toasting me with his whiskey. "I'm going to have to get you to cater one of our company retreats." "All about the timing," I say, smiling. "And bourbon." I glance over to the other side of the yard, where my wife is talking to Jake Mitchell and his wife. I see Emily throwing her head back, laughing at something Jake just said, as she touches his arm. Carl Peterson walks up to me holding a paper plate. "I love these neighborhood barbecues," he says. "Remember when you and Emily showed us around this place a few months ago?" "Mom's got her way with words," I say, flipping a steak. "How's work, by the way? Emily said you've been busy with some merger at your firm." I nodded. "It's been a lot. Thomas has been a big help." Jake said something on the other side of the yard, and Sarah and Emily both laughed. His hand was on the back of Sarah's chair, but he was leaning in the opposite direction, toward Emily. I'd noticed things like this before, little signs that they were trying to be closer to each other without anyone noticing. "James," I hear Carl say, "you all right over there? That steak is going to be well done." I move the meat to the cooler side of the grill. "Sorry, I was just thinking about something." Emily walked up to me. She had a glass of wine in her hand, and I could smell her perfume. She was wearing the new perfume she had bought, which I noticed she had started wearing more and more often. "It smells delicious," she said. "Jake and I were just talking about a hiking trail near Crystal Lake. You and I should go there someday. Maybe we can all go," Carl suggests. "Next weekend?" She smiled at me, but it looked a little bit forced. "We'll see. James has been really busy lately." She walked back over to where she had been standing, and Jake began speaking with her again. Sarah had moved on and was talking to Tom's wife. "Food will be ready in 10 minutes, I tell the group, even though my chest is starting to tighten. The evening continues as planned. We eat at the long tables I had set up, everyone complimenting the food and the wine. Emily does her best to make sure everyone is having a good time, but I notice how she and Jake often go to the kitchen to get more wine and food at the same time, and how their eyes meet across the table when we all talk. "He's a good addition to the firm," Tom says when there's a break in the conversation. "He has a keen eye. He doesn't miss a thing." Jake shifted in his chair, and Emily's hand gripped her wine glass a little tighter. "Attention to detail, Jake," I tell him. "Small things matter." The conversation moves on from this, but I feel like I got what I wanted. The rest of the evening feels different for me. I pay attention to every interaction, every look, not writing anything off as normal because no one else seems to notice. When people start to leave, Sarah comes up to me. "Thank you for a lovely evening, James." I look at her, trying to figure out if she feels the same way I do, if she sees it too. "Of course, anytime," I say, wondering if there will ever be a time when I'll mean those words again. Jake puts his hand on her shoulder. "Maybe we could come over next weekend, if you don't have anything else planned?" Emily comes up next to me, taking my arm. "We'd love to have you, but we'll have to see if we're going hiking or not." They leave, along with everybody else, and soon it's just me and Emily left. As usual, I stand around for a while, taking in the fresh air and the silence, while Emily starts cleaning up the mess. "Did it?" I say, moving to the next section of string lights, flicking them off. "Jake thought it was fun." She stops, and I can feel her eyes on me. "Of course I did. Wasn't that the whole purpose of the party?" I look at her, trying not to sound accusing. "Was it?" She stares at me for a few seconds, and then shakes her head. "I don't have the energy for this conversation right now, James. Let's just clean up and go to bed." I don't say anything. I just help her clean the table, but in my mind, I've already made up my mind to start paying closer attention to her whereabouts. I will check her calendar, her phone, and her car. I will write down everything she does and see if I can find any clues as to who she's been seeing. I've done similar things at work. I'm good at noticing details and finding patterns. It's what I do. When we walk back inside, I look at Jake and Sarah's house across the street. As I turn around to close the door, I see Emily looking in the same direction. The next few weeks went by fast. I kept a close eye on Emily's comings and goings and wrote down every time she was late home or had an unexpected meeting somewhere. I prepared a spreadsheet and followed her movements. Since it got dark early this time of the year, it was easy to keep an eye on her without her noticing. And by the time the first snow came and the trees had lost all of their leaves, I had found a pattern, and I was almost sure of what was going on. It's early November now. I can't help but wonder whether Emily is lying to me about her schedule. She has a detailed calendar that she always keeps up to date. Looking at it now, I see several examples where she could be lying to me. For example, late meeting, client dinner. That was from 3 weeks ago. Jake told Sarah he was going to a business networking event on that same day when I overheard them talking at the mailbox. Jake doesn't work with Emily as far as I know, but it's possible they have mutual acquaintances. I get a text from Emily. Working late. I'll have to skip dinner. Meeting a big client. I looked at the message again. It was too well written. Good luck with the client, I reply. Her response takes a couple of tries. I will. Get some food, okay? The exclamation mark at the end of the sentence makes it sound more like a demand than a question. I put down the phone and continue to study the calendar. There are several entries that go together with her gym visits, her book club, her lunches with clients. The apartment is empty. I've started to notice it more and more lately. It is empty more often now, 3 times this week, 5 times last week. It is as if she is planning something, slowly but steadily. I hear a notification from my computer. I have received an email from Tom. James, nice job on the Morrison account. Oh, Emily said she's taking care of that new client from Crystal Lake. If you need anything from us, just ask. I sit back in my chair, considering the ramifications of this. Crystal Lake, the place where Jake and Emily were supposed to go hiking, but never did, and the place where Jake's real estate company just opened a new office. The doorbell rang, and I got up to answer it, finding Carl on the other side of the door with a 6-pack of craft beer. Figured you could use a friend, he says, picking up on something in my face. Sarah told me Emily's working late again. I invited him inside. Another client meeting? I ask, leading him to the kitchen. 3rd one this week? Carl asks cautiously, placing the beer on the counter. 4th? I pull 2 glasses from the cupboard, trying to keep my hands from shaking. James, Carl begins, then hesitates. Have you asked her about all the nights she's been out? And say what? I ask, pouring the beer. That I've been following her calendar like some jealous boyfriend? Aren't you? I took a deep gulp of beer and considered my response. I'm a lawyer, Carl. I believe in evidence, not allegations. And what do you think the evidence says? I head to my office, Carl in tow. There on the desk is the calendar. Check out October 12th, I tell him, pointing. Emily had a client dinner at Bella Rosa. Jake posted a photo on Instagram that night. Same restaurant, different table, but you can see a blonde woman's shoulder in the background, wearing the same dress Emily wore that night. He looks at the calendar. Could be a coincidence, he says, though he doesn't sound convinced. And then there's November 3rd. Sarah had book club. Emily told me she had to work late, but when I swung by her office, her car wasn't there. Jake's truck wasn't in his driveway. You went to her office? And the gym, and Crystal Lake. I deflate in my seat. I'm turning into a different person, Carl. He sat across from me, looking worried. What are you going to do? My phone buzzed. Another text from my girlfriend. Meeting's dragging on? May do dinner with the client? Don't wait for me. I showed Carl the message. Feel like cruising past Bella Rosa? He asks, half jokingly. No. I put the phone away. I want my wife back. James. Carl pauses. Maybe it's not what you think. Did you ever consider that I'm imagining things, that I'm jumping to conclusions? I open a drawer, pull out a folder. I've got security cameras, time-stamped footage, Emily leaving for the gym at the same time Jake leaves for the gym. 3 times last week, both of them coming back at the same time. He looked at the pictures, a frown creasing his forehead. Fuck, dude. Yeah, I shut the folder. Fuck. We both sit there in silence, drinking our beers. I look around at the place as if seeing it for the first time. Hey, remember when those 2 moved in? Carl says suddenly. Jake and Sarah? Emily went over to say hi. She's always good at saying hi, I reply, my words dripping with resentment. My phone buzzed again. It was a group text from Sarah to me and a few other neighbors. Hey guys, sick tonight, book club is off. Sorry for the short notice. I showed Carl the message. Fuck. I got to my feet, feeling restless. And you know what the worst part is? I paced the room. I'm not even mad anymore. I'm just exhausted. I'm exhausted from trying not to see it. I'm exhausted from overthinking it. I'm exhausted from wondering if I'm crazy or if I'm just finally noticing shit. What are you going to do? I paused at the window for a second, looking at the house across the street. I saw a light turn on for a moment, then go dark again. I'm going to do what any good attorney does, I say, looking back at Carl. I'm going to build my case, gather my evidence, and when I have everything in order... You'll confront her? No. I sit back down and open another folder. I'm going to present my findings to Sarah first. She deserves to know what I know. Carl looked at me for a long moment and then nodded. Want some help with all of this? Yeah, I say, looking at the folder. I think I do. We spend the next few hours gathering my evidence and organizing it. I already have a lot of dates noted where Emily's statements don't match. Either she has lost her mind or she's lying to me. I have to be patient and wait for the right moment to catch her. I woke up early this morning. I never got to bed, actually. I was up all night watching my security cameras and going through the footage, looking for more clues. Emily got home sometime during the night, probably around 2 or 3 a.m. I could hear her walk up the stairs and go to bed. Morning light came through the windows, and I realized Emily was getting up and preparing to leave. She had told me she had another early meeting. James, do you know where my blue portfolio is? The one with the Crystal Lake proposals? Yeah, it should be on the kitchen counter, I reply. There were more noises from upstairs, and then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Emily came out a few seconds later, wearing a dark blue dress. I'm so late, she says, collecting some documents off the counter. Tom's gonna murder me if I miss the morning briefing. I watch her collect her things. Her phone is buzzing with text messages. Got plans today? I ask her. She looks at her phone, tilting it away from me. Don't I always? The price of success, huh? She puts her phone in her purse, but it falls out and clatters to the ground, sliding beneath the kitchen table. She doesn't notice this as she grabs her coffee. Make sure you have lunch, she tells me, planting a kiss on my cheek. It's the new perfume she's wearing. I might be working late again tonight. Don't wait up. She closes the door behind her. I hear her car starting up outside. I stay seated at the table, looking down at her phone. It lights up every now and then with new messages. I wait 15 minutes before I move. I know her phone code. It's the year she was born. She never changed it. Never saw a reason to. This is wrong, I say out loud, but I unlock it anyway. The Messages app opened up to reveal a conversation with Tom. At first, it just looked like normal work stuff, about a meeting coming up. Then I scrolled up a bit and saw this. Tom, I miss our private briefings. What do you say tomorrow in your office? Or mine? Emily, mine. And bring that tie I like. I scrolled up a bit more and saw some pictures. They weren't nude, but they were definitely inappropriate. A couple of them showed Tom and Emily together, at a restaurant or out for drinks, and one of them showed his hand resting on her knee under the table. I felt sick to my stomach, but kept reading. There was more. Another conversation with Jake, who she had under the contact name Gym Buddy. Sarah's book club is tonight. Your place or the lake house? Lake house. You bring the wine, I'll bring the dessert. My hands were shaking, and I almost dropped the phone. I checked to see if there were more, and found a conversation with Carl. Last night was incredible. You really don't think James has any idea? He's too busy to notice. Don't worry. See you at lunch? I felt like I was going to pass out. I put the phone down on the desk and tried to catch my breath, afraid I was going to hyperventilate. My memories of Carl's visits to my house, his constant questions about how the investigation was going, all of it came rushing back to me now. He had been doing recon, checking to see if I was onto them. A text message notification popped up on the screen. It was from Jake. Missing you already. Last night was perfect. My heart was pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe this was really happening. It felt like a nightmare. Another notification popped up, this time from Tom. Wear that navy dress today. Easy access. And another one. Carl, lunch at our usual spot? I need my Emily fix. I stood up from the desk abruptly, knocking over my chair. I began pacing the room, running my hands through my hair. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything. The evidence I had found on Emily's phone was damning, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only the tip of the iceberg. Another text message popped up. This time from Sarah. We need to talk. James knows something. Jake's getting nervous. I let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Of course, Sarah was involved too. I had suspected that much, but now I was sure of it. She had been running interference, trying to keep me off the scent. I sat back down at the desk, feeling defeated. The sun was shining through the window, warm on my face, but I felt cold, hollow inside. My heart was racing and my head was pounding. For a few minutes, I just sat there, trying to think of what to do next. Then my own phone buzzed. I checked it and saw it was a text message from Emily. Having coffee with Tom before the meeting. Hope you're having a good morning? I stared at the message for a second, then let out a long breath. She was still pretending like everything was normal. I couldn't believe it. It made me feel even more sick, seeing how she could lie to me so easily. I sat back down at the desk and took out my laptop. Then I began downloading everything from Emily's phone onto my computer. I took screenshots of all the messages and saved them to a folder. I wanted to make sure I had a record of everything, just in case. When I was done, I turned off Emily's phone. I was about to put it back in the drawer when a final text message came in. Jake, tonight, Sarah's visiting her sister. I turned off the phone and put it back where I'd found it, under the table. I didn't delete anything, or mark the messages as read. I wanted Emily to feel safe, to feel like I'd never seen them. That way I could gather more evidence, and I had a plan for that. You see, I hadn't told Carl about everything I'd been doing. I hadn't told him about the private investigator I'd hired, who had been following Emily, Tom, Jake, and Sarah for weeks. I'd been gathering evidence on them, slowly but surely. And now it was time to put that evidence to use. I opened up my email and began composing a message to my PI. Proceed, I type. Send it all. It's morning now. My wife is off somewhere with Tom, or Jake, or Carl, or maybe someone I haven't found out about yet. But for some reason I'm feeling okay with that now. I take a drink of my coffee, which had gone cold, and go to the kitchen to make a fresh pot. I needed to be clear-headed for what I was going to do. I had to be strategic. I had to be smart. I had to be focused. More than that, I had to be patient. The game had changed after all, and they didn't even know it yet. But they would. The next week passed by in a slow burn of pretending everything was normal while I prepared for what I needed to do. I acted the same and didn't let on that I knew what was going on, but I started to piece together a plan. By the time the packages began to arrive, I had it all figured out. The Amazon packages arrive one by one over the course of a few days. I pick them up from the front porch before she gets home. Tiny cameras and microphones to surveil her, to catch her in the act. The first one I installed in our bedroom. The second went in the living room. The third went in the kitchen, equipped with video and audio. You did some redecorating today, Emily says that night, noticing the picture frame. I like it. Yeah, nothing major, I tell her, seeing in the window how she watches the photos change. Remember Cabo last year? That was the best, she replies, dreamily. She doesn't see the frame catch her expression when she gets a call from Jake. As soon as I get home, I set everything up, and now I'm watching our lives from all different angles. Hey, it's me, Emily's saying into her phone one night while she thinks I'm asleep. No, he's upstairs. Yes, I miss you too. Tomorrow, same time. I watch her from the spy cam in the kitchen. She's wearing a silk robe and she's smiling, talking to Carl on the phone. They're making plans to meet up for lunch. I hear the whole conversation. The next morning, Tom comes over again before work. Emily said she forgot some paperwork, he says when I open the door. She did? I ask, letting him in. Emily's on her way to work already. Yeah, I know, he replies, smiling. She asked me to come get them. In some of the videos, you can see Tom hanging around in our entrance hall, right where Emily usually stands when they kiss goodbye. He fixes his tie, which Emily apparently likes, and smiles. Jake shows up as well, but only for a few brief moments. Sarah's been tied up helping her sister, Jake says on one of his visits. It's good to have neighbors to chat with. People to chat with indeed, I say back to him as I watch his eyes wander to the staircase, where Emily is changing for the gym. I make backup copies of the evidence and put them in a safety deposit box at a bank where Emily, or no one we know, has an account. Carl doesn't come around as often anymore, but the security cameras show him sitting in his car outside our house, talking on the phone with Emily. James is acting strange, Emily says to him from the kitchen. I think he's overworked. Why don't you guys take a trip? Carl suggests, touching her on the lower back when he thinks no one is looking. Get him out of the house. I watch their reflection in the window, on top of the darkening garden. They look so beautiful together. It becomes a sort of meditation. The regularity of it all is soothing. Mondays are for Tom. They meet in his office. Wednesdays are for Jake. They meet after her non-existent book club, and in between, she sees Carl. "You've been a lot more relaxed," Emily mentions one night while we're making food together. "Not as on edge." "I've been getting a lot more rest lately," I reply, dicing vegetables. "I'm starting to see more clearly." She stopped chopping an onion and looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Like I'm just noticing stuff more?" She changes her posture slightly and looks at her phone. That evening, she sends a message to her friends. "We need to be more careful. I think something's wrong." I save that too, and the replies. The next day, I install the last camera. It's in her mirror. I see her practicing her facial expressions, trying to look innocent. "Late meeting tonight," she says to the mirror, rehearsing. Then, a little gentler, "Late meeting tonight, hun. Don't wait up." I put that in a separate file on my computer labeled Performance Review. The days continued on like this for the next little while, with me collecting more and more evidence. "We need to have another neighborhood party soon," Emily says at breakfast. "It's been too long." I glanced at her as she spoke, checking her expression on the camera as well. "Sure, we could have everyone over for dinner." "Everyone?" She stammers a bit. "Tom, Jake, and Sarah. Carl. The gang." She quickly regained her composure, but I noticed her grip tighten on her coffee cup. "Sounds good. This weekend?" "Perfect," I say, thinking about the footage I'll capture. A nice little end cap, everyone together in one shot. I spent the rest of the night listening to the recordings, going through Emily's phone calls, hearing her conspiring with her lover, planning how they would pull this off without me knowing. The final recording was from just a few minutes ago, from Emily's conversation with her own reflection in the bathroom mirror. "I love you," she tells her reflection in the mirror, rehearsing. "I've always loved you, James." I saved that one too, but in a different folder. This one labeled simply Truth. Tomorrow, I'll watch more footage, add more files to my collection. But tonight, I sit in my office, surrounded by screens showing empty rooms, waiting for the next act to begin. In the quiet house, I can almost hear the humming of hidden cameras, recording the silence between lies. The neighborhood gathering this weekend will be special indeed. After all, I've become quite good at directing scenes myself. As I finish going through the last files, I prepare 3 emails. Last chance to turn back, I say, but it's for the cameras and the recordings, as much as it is for me. I look down at my phone, seeing a text from Emily. "Running late at work, babe. Don't wait up." I click the heart emoji and send Sarah's email first. I attach a few things to it, including some video evidence, and send it off. Then I turn my attention to Tom's email. Send it. The third email contains the most damning evidence. Proof that Tom was using company money and time to cover up his dirty affair, and some stuff that would definitely get the Bar Association's attention. I clicked send, and within moments I received notification that Sarah had opened the email. I imagined her looking at the video of Tom and Rachel at their lake house and felt a bit of satisfaction. Just then my phone began to ring. It was Carl. "Voicemail that," I say, seeing his name pop up. Email opened. HR Department, Wilson and Associates. It was happening faster than I thought. I opened up the cameras from outside the house and saw Sarah walking back and forth in front of the window. She was on the phone, probably calling Jake. I got an email from Tom's office. "Mr. Anderson, we have received your anonymous tip. We will look into this matter promptly. Please ensure that you have all of the necessary evidence." "I do," I say, patting my external hard drive. Carl called me back again, then Emily, then Jake. I stared at my phone, watching as it rang and rang. They were probably starting to realize things weren't going according to plan. A car door slammed outside. I looked at the cameras and saw Sarah leaving her house, marching across the street. She rang the doorbell. I straightened my tie and went downstairs to greet her. "Sarah," I say as I open the door. "What's going on?" Tears were streaming down her face, and she was holding a phone in her hand. "Did you know?" she asks, barging her way inside. "Do I know what?" Just don't." She holds up her phone with a picture from the lake house. "Did you know?" I took the phone and looked at the photo, as if I hadn't already seen it. "Sarah, How long?" Her voice is shaky. "How long have they been—" "Let's sit," I say, leading her to the living room. "Do you want some water?" She sits down on the couch and begins to sob. "I feel so stupid," she says. "You're not," I reply, sitting down. "They were careful. Professional con men usually are." She looked up sharply. Usually? I nodded. Oh God, she says. You knew. You sent the email. My phone started to ring again. Emily. You should call Jake, I say, getting to my feet. He's probably looking for you. What are you going to do? Sarah asks, tears in her eyes. Me. I'm going to go make some coffee. You want some? She looks at me for a second, and then recognition appears in her eyes. You've got more than what you gave me, right? I walked into the kitchen, letting her catch up. The coffee maker's new, she points out, and the picture frame. Yeah, I've been redecorating, I say, dropping the coffee grounds into the filter. I needed a change. The phone began to ring again. It was Jake. She ignored it. Everyone is in on it, aren't they? She asks softly. Not just Jake and Emily. I put a fresh pot of coffee on. The truth always comes out, I say at last. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of a push. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tom. It said, "Whatever you think you know, we should talk." Sarah read the message as well. And when we do, I pour her a cup and slide it across to her. All we can do now is wait. The rest will take care of itself. She took a sip, her hands a bit steadier now. I want to see, she says. I want to see it all. I look at her and see the same coldness and clarity in her eyes as I feel within myself. Sure? Let me see. I brought her upstairs and showed her the screens, bringing up the evidence. She looked at it all with a growing expression of disappointment and horror, like she was finding out everything she thought was real was a lie. A few minutes later, we saw Jake's car pull into the driveway on one of the cameras. He got out of the car and ran inside, calling for his wife. He'll find out, I say, closing tabs as my phone rings with another call from Emily. Sarah nodded and squared her shoulders. Good. The next few days were filled with planning and anger. Sarah stayed with her sister and went to work as usual, not wanting to arouse suspicion with Jake. I helped Carl and Emily prepare for our meeting at my house, when we would finally lay all of our cards out on the table. I was in the kitchen, putting wine glasses on the table. Sarah was helping me. It had been 3 days since she saw the evidence, and tonight was going to be my one chance to record the whole thing. How are you doing? I ask, watching as her hands shake a little while setting down the utensils. Okay, I guess, she replies. Feels good to have something to do. The doorbell rang. I looked at the security camera feed on my phone and saw Carl standing there, holding a bottle of wine. Let the show begin, I say, making my way to the door. Thanks for having us, James, Carl says, a little too excitedly. I take the wine bottle from his hand. It was an expensive brand. Sarah's already here, helping me set up, I said, and I noticed his hesitation at the mention of her name. Everyone else is coming, right? He asks, walking with me to the kitchen. Everyone who's important. The bell rang again. It was Tom and his wife, followed by Jake. Emily had texted earlier to say she'd be fashionably late, whatever that means. What's that delicious smell, babe? Tom's wife asks. Beef Wellington, I answer. Emily's favorite. Jake fidgets in his chair, and I notice Carl looking down at his phone. On the monitor, I see Emily pulling up in the driveway. She comes in without ringing the doorbell, wearing a new dress and with her hair done up. Sorry I'm late, everybody, she says in that sing-song professional voice. I watch her on the monitor as she hugs Tom's wife, kisses Jake's wife, touches Carl's arm. Wine? I ask, holding up a bottle. It's that Bordeaux you like, Emily. Sure, she answers, but her hand is trembling as she takes the glass. We all sat down at the dinner table. I had planned who would sit where to keep certain people apart. Emily had been placed between Tom's wife and Sarah, and Jake was across from Carl. They were all on camera. I'd like to make a toast, I say, holding up my glass, to good friends and honest relationships. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Everyone looked away from me. To honest relationships, Sarah says, her tone so sharp it makes Jake wince. We sit down and begin to talk, trying to act natural. I notice that Tom is wearing a tie, which Emily likes, and that Carl is tapping his foot anxiously. Great meal, Tom's wife says, breaking the silence. Jim's always been a great preparer, Emily says, looking right at me. Yes, I reply, getting up to take the dishes. You want to help me with dessert, Sarah? In the kitchen, Sarah asked me, Are you sure about this? I nodded and started up a laptop with some files I'd prepared earlier. It's time they saw themselves for what they really are. Back in the dining room, I dimmed the lights a little bit. I figured we could watch something for dessert, I say, bringing over the laptop that's hooked up to our TV. What are we putting on? Emily asks, a little too cheerfully. A documentary, I tell her, about lying. My screen came to life, showing video surveillance footage of the lake house. What the hell is this? Jake asks, standing halfway up from his chair. Sit down, Sarah says. Just watch. The video showed Tom's office after hours, Carl's car in hidden locations, and text messages that appeared on the screen. James, Emily says, looking white as a sheet. No, I interrupt. You've all said enough. Now you listen. I heard a gasp, the sound of a wine glass spilling, and the quiet sound of Tom's wife crying. I trusted you, I say. You sat with me. You had dinner with me. You all looked at me while you... We can explain, Carl says. Can you explain this? I ask, playing a video of him and Emily in the kitchen. His wife got up from her chair. How long? She asks her husband. Julia, come on, Tom says, grabbing her hand. She pulled her hand back. How long? Months, I say for him. All of them, months. The video went on and on. Jake was looking down at his hands. Carl looked like he was going to puke. Emily sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her face. And there's a lot more where that came from, I add. I've brought copies for the whole class, including the ethics board at your firm, Tom, and HR. You'll ruin us, Tom says. No, Sarah says. You did this to yourselves. I hand them out and let them read their own. James, Emily eventually says, choking on the name. I didn't want to get caught, I ask. I know. You all were so meticulous, so thorough, until you weren't. Soon after that, people began taking out the letters and reading them. What do you want? Jake asks, his voice raspy. Want? I chuckle. I want you all to know, to live with it, like I've been living with it, like Sarah has been living with it. The woman stands again, collecting her purse. I need to talk to my lawyer, she says to Tom. I don't want you coming home tonight. She shut the door and left. You guys should get going, I say, closing the video. Sarah and I will grab dessert on our own. They all stand up. Emily is the last of them, reaching out a hand for me. Don't, I say. Go. The guests start to leave. I watch them on the security cameras as they get into their cars and drive away. Room for dessert? I ask Sarah, taking out 2 small dishes of creme brulee. She chuckles a little. Sure, why not? After everything we've been through, I think we've earned a little sweetness. We sit down together and enjoy the dessert while we watch the cameras and see everyone leave our house. Tomorrow there will be hell to pay. Lawsuits, resignations, divorces. But tonight we will enjoy a little bit of schadenfreude. It's been 3 weeks since we first found out about the affair, and I've spent those weeks collecting evidence, preparing the dinner, and making sure that everyone would be there. During that time, I barely spoke to Sarah. I don't know if she was ashamed or just afraid of what I'd do, but right now, as the dinner party is about to begin, I don't care. All I care about is making sure that everyone is here and that they get what's coming to them. The creme brulee is in the fridge, but before it's time for dessert, I have a very special surprise for all my guests. I picked up the remote and headed over to the TV. It had gotten hot in the dining room, and I felt 5 sets of eyes on me as I approached the wall-mounted television. Before we have dessert, I say calmly, I thought we could all watch a little presentation together. My wife stopped mid-sip, looking at me. Honey, maybe we can just... No, I tell him. I want to. The video showed the lake house. Emily's car was rolling up next to Jake's in the driveway. The timestamp on the video read, October 15th, 7:42 p.m. What is this? Tom's wife, Julia, asks. Proof, I respond, moving on to the next video. The video fast-forwarded to Tom's office at night, showing Emily sitting on his desk, Tom standing between her legs with his tie loosened. Turn it off, Tom says, starting to stand up from his chair. Stay seated, Sarah replies coldly. You're going to want to watch this. Carl looks pale as they find the text between him and Emily. James, please, Emily chokes out. This isn't necessary, I ask. I think it is, and I actually have a gift for all of you. I took the manila envelopes out of my briefcase. Julia, I say, handing her the first one, I think you'll be interested in seeing your husband's expense reports. All those dinners he had to have with clients? No clients? She took the envelope from him with trembling hands. Jake, I say, yours involves GPS data from your truck. It's crazy how many times your truck was at the lake house when Sarah was at book club. Sarah gives a little half laugh, half sob. And Carl, I look at my old friend. Your file shows every lunch, every time you bumped into me, every time you came here under the guise of helping me, only to tell Emily everything. There are sounds of rustling paper and gasps of surprise as more and more evidence is shown on the projector screen. How long? Julia asks her husband. How long have you been? Does it matter? I ask her. Months. They've all been coming for months. She stands up. James, you have to believe me. I do believe you, I interrupted. I believe the lunch dates. I believe the late meetings. I believe the lies. I believe all of you laughing at me behind my back, giving each other little looks across the table at dinner parties like this one. Jake looks down at the floor. Carl looks nauseous, and Tom keeps fidgeting with his tie. There are duplicates, I tell them matter-of-factly. For the ethics committee, Tom. For your company's HR department. For any future divorce lawyers. You'll get rid of it all, Tom says meekly. No, Sarah replies. You all did that yourselves. Emily sat down again, and tears ran down her cheeks. Why like this? She asks. Why not just talk to me? I laughed. 'Cause you didn't backstab me in private, did you? No, you took that shit public. Then Emily in the bathroom, practicing her lies in front of the mirror. I let you in, I tell them one by one. Into my home. I fed you. I looked you in the eye while you were setting up this whole thing. We didn't mean, Carl starts. To get caught, I finish. I know. You were all so meticulous, up until you weren't. She got up and grabbed her purse. I'll be calling my lawyer in the morning, she says to Tom. Don't come home tonight. The door shut behind her. The rest of you should leave, I say, ending the video call. Sarah and I will take care of dessert. They all get up and start walking out of the room. Emily is the last, holding out her hand to me. Please, I say, leave. One by one, people begin to leave, and soon it's just me and Sarah left alone in the aftermath of all the revelations. We see them outside, walking away to their cars. Well, Sarah says after a long moment, that was some dinner party. I went to the kitchen and came back with 2 plates of creme brulee. Some dessert? She chuckled and nodded. Sure, why not? We sat at the kitchen table and ate the creme brulee in silence. There would be plenty of time tomorrow to deal with the fallout of this mess. But for now, all I could do was enjoy the fact that the truth was out in the open at last. The next day, I woke up to a gray, overcast morning. After a few hours of sleep and a couple of reassuring text messages from Sarah, I got up and drove downtown. I left the dishes in the sink, knowing I would have to deal with them later. But first, I had an important meeting I needed to attend. The next day, I'm sitting in my lawyer's office on the 10th floor, looking out the window at the leaves blowing past. I gave her copies of everything I had shown at the dinner and a few other things as well. It's, detailed, Catherine Reeves says, putting on her reading glasses as she looks over the paperwork. Very detailed. I had all night, I respond. She looked up at me, sizing me up. The divorce has already been filed as of this morning. With all the evidence we have, I think we have a very good case. My phone rings again. Emily has called me 17 times since she left the house last night. She's calling me again, I tell her, hanging up the phone. Don't answer, Catherine tells me. Let the system handle it. Tom Wilson texted me, asking for an urgent meeting to discuss options. Looks like they're in a panic, I say to Catherine, flashing my phone. Of course they are. You just blew up their whole operation. Oh, and on that note, she produces another piece of paper. I filed your grievance against Tom with the ethics board this morning. They're holding an emergency meeting. Just then the intercom buzzed. Miss Reeves, there's an Emily Anderson in the lobby who needs to see you. She raised an eyebrow at me. Up to you, she says. Let's make her wait, I say. She got to speak for months. Now it's my time. We spend the next hour going over strategy. My phone vibrates across my desk a few more times as Carl, Jake, and even Sarah try to get a hold of me. Catherine, you have that restraining order in place against Carl, right? You ask, slipping another sheet into our binder. Yeah, she replies. He stalked me for a long time, so hopefully they'll grant it soon. I get up from my chair and go over to the window. I can see Emily's car parked outside, far down below. She isn't going away, I say. She can't stand the idea of not having the last word, Catherine replies. People like her usually can't. I looked down and saw that it was a message from her. Thank you for telling me. Meeting my lawyer now, it said. It's all happening quicker than I would have hoped, I tell Catherine, showing her the text. That's how it is sometimes. Once you open the floodgates... Another interruption from the intercom. Ma'am, Mrs. Anderson is getting persistent. Catherine picked up her phone. Security, can you please remove Mrs. Anderson from the building? Yes, feel free to contact the authorities if you must. I watch as 2 security guards walk up to Emily's car. She won't cause a scene, I tell him. She would never want to look bad. She slowly drove away, giving up her dignity, but not her life. And now, I ask, sitting back down. Catherine starts sorting papers into folders. This evidence will expedite the divorce. Tom will be up for an ethics review and his partnership will be in jeopardy. Carl will get the restraining order by the end of the week. And Jake? Sarah's taking care of that, I conclude. She has plans for him. I receive an email notification from my phone, Carl's resignation letter, effective immediately. They're falling apart quicker than I thought they would, I confess. People built on lies usually do, Catherine says, shutting the final file. What do you plan to do next? I think for a second, watching another swirl of leaves blow past the window. I got a cabin near Crystal Lake, I tell her, amused by the cliché. A place to think. That's good. You need to get away. And James? She looks me in the eyes. You did the right thing. Remember that. I see another video pop up on my phone from my home security cameras. Emily trying to get in with her key, discovering the locks had been changed. She's desperate, I say. We knew she would be. The emergency restraining order is already in the works. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Sarah. Jake moved out this morning. Thank you for giving me my life back. I got up and put on my coat. You'll keep me posted on the hearing? Yes, Catherine nods, escorting me out. And get some sleep, James. It's almost all done. I look at the floor numbers in the elevator while my phone keeps buzzing. Tom's company is notifying everyone about his temporary leave of absence. Carl's wife is posting about life-changing betrayals. Jake's real estate license is under investigation. The lobby is empty. The fresh air smells like autumn. I remember the smell from that evening when I noticed the signs for the first time. I unlock my car and get in. Emily's car comes into view for a couple of seconds before it turns. Forget about it, I say, getting into the car. My phone lit up one last time with a group text from Emily to everyone involved pleading, "We need to talk, please, all of us." I ignored it, turned on the car, and headed out of the city. I would go to the cabin at Crystal Lake and stay there for a while. Let them sort this out by themselves. I had nothing more to say. The drive to Crystal Lake took about 2 hours. I had rented the cabin for a month and paid the property manager in cash. I slept well the first night, and by the end of the first week, I started to feel more relaxed. October arrived with frost, and the leaves of the trees around the lake turned from green to red. I stopped checking my social media accounts, and I didn't answer my phone when someone called. I just needed to distance myself from everything and everyone, and it worked. Until this morning. 3 weeks have passed since the dinner party. Since then, I've been hearing rumors about Emily and her increasingly erratic behavior. Just today, I got a text from Sarah saying she'd seen Emily at Trader Joe's. She said she hadn't seen her, but everyone else was looking at her. You okay? I reply. Doing better than she is. Jake's real estate license got revoked yesterday. Karma's a bitch. I get a notification from a local news website. It says Emily's real estate firm has accepted her resignation effective immediately, and there are a lot of comments mentioning recent events and moral turpitude. Carl's wife is calling me. James, I just wanted to let you know, Emily tried to get into our book club last night. Crazy, right? What happened? I ask, even though I have a pretty good idea. Julia, Tom's ex, was there. It was awkward. Emily left in tears. 2 ducks are swimming on the lake. Thank you for telling me, Margaret. We support you, James. What she did, what they all did. I hang up before she can say anything else. The ducks are far away now, reaching the other side of the lake. I get another text message. It's from Tom's former partner. Just thought you'd want to know. The ethics board made a decision today. Tom is suspended pending a further investigation. I forward the message to Catherine, my lawyer, and she replies almost instantly. Good. There are clear rules against using company resources for personal affairs. Emily's testimony didn't help him either. So she testified after all. I get another update from Sarah. Emily just tried to enter Willow Creek Country Club. Her membership has been suspended. I pour myself another cup of coffee and chuckle. Emily always loved to hang out at the club, especially by the pool. The mighty have fallen, I text back. Speaking of falling, Carl's wife is selling their house. Apparently his temporary move to his brother's isn't so temporary anymore. Emily's silver Mercedes appeared at the end of my driveway, slowly making its way up to the cabin. "She's arrived," I text Catherine. "Restraining order, that's all you need to say. Call the police." The car stopped halfway up the driveway, and I saw Emily sitting behind the wheel, wondering what to do. The sheriff was calling me. "Mr. Anderson, we were informed by your security provider. Would you like us to dispatch an officer?" I watched as Emily got in her car and drove away, thinking about all the times I'd seen her go off to her meetings in the past. "Wait 5 minutes," I say. "She won't come back. She never does when someone fights back." The Mercedes slowly reverses out of the driveway, then turns and drives off down the street. She doesn't even look back. A text from Sarah comes through. "Jake's trying to sell the lake house. No takers. Can't imagine why." That gets a chuckle out of me, remembering the tapes. The sun is glinting off the lake, making it look like a million shining diamonds are twinkling on the water. Emily always loved those earrings, I think to myself. Then I realized she had told me they were from her mother. But they were actually from Tom. A news alert comes across my phone. Local real estate agent under investigation for illegal practices. I read the article quickly. It doesn't mention Emily by name, but it doesn't need to. Anyone in Willow Creek would know who the article was referring to, and it wasn't long before the comments started to appear. "Yeah, I saw her at Starbucks yesterday. She looked like shit. Karma, it will get you. What goes around comes around." I was still reading when Catherine called. Emily's attorney called. They want to discuss a settlement. "No need," I say. "They know the terms. That's what I told them. She's going to be out of luck soon, James. People are coming together." A boat was out on the lake. She's got no more options. She had options before. I put my phone back in my pocket and went to check my email. There were a few messages from people who had invited me to charity balls and parties in the coming weeks, but who now were kindly revoking those invitations. I had expected this, though, and it didn't bother me. Those people were all friends of Emily's. The last message from Sarah came through, saying, "Just saw Emily leaving town. She was driving her car with suitcases loaded in the back, heading for the interstate." I got up and walked down to the lake. The water was lapping at the shore, washing away footprints in the wet sand, wiping the slate clean, the way I hoped my life could be, now that I wasn't living a lie anymore. My phone buzzed again, and I looked at it. It was a message from Emily, or at least she was typing one. But then the 3 dots disappeared, and the message never came. I deleted the notification and put my phone away, looking out at the setting sun. Tomorrow would be another day, and there would be news of Emily's downfall, and more messages from people telling me they weren't my friends anymore. But I would have one thing I never had before: the truth. In the distance, some ducks swam past, leaving a trail of ripples behind them, but the water quickly settled, covering over their tracks. I stayed at the lake that evening until the sun went down, and then I went home. The weeks went by, then months, and eventually the seasons changed. I threw myself into my work and tried to move on from what had happened. The lake house was sold, and I didn't see it again. As the first snow began to fall, I found I could finally breathe again for the first time in a while. The snow is falling in Willow Creek. It's been 6 months since Emily left me, and I'm back in my hometown. I meet Sarah for coffee. "The house sold," she says, stirring her latte. "Above asking price, too. Can you imagine? Not even a lake house discount?" I say, trying to grin. I guess the scandal wore off, or everyone just forgot. I look out the window and see young couples walking by, full of hope and potential. Across the street, I see a "for sale" sign on Carl's old office building with a banner that says, "Under new management." "Have you spoken to Tom's wife recently?" I ask. "Julia, right? She's seeing someone else now, some professor at the community college. She seems content." My phone buzzed. My lawyer, Catherine. "The divorce was finalized," I say to Sarah. "Got the notice earlier today." She reaches over the table and gives my hand a quick squeeze. "What does it feel like?" "A bit like a book I've been meaning to finish." The bell above the door rang and we both jumped, but it was just Tom's old partner, who nodded to us respectfully. "They're doing better with the new boss," Sarah says. "They've been growing." Turns out things run a lot smoother when your employees aren't dating each other. Another couple passes by, smiling and laughing. I can't help but smile. It wasn't long ago that I thought I'd never enjoy life like that again. "Have you spoken to anyone?" Sarah asks, cautiously. "About any of them?" "Carl's living in Seattle. He works for a real estate development company. Jake's a tennis instructor at a country club in Florida. And Emily? And I watch snowflakes falling from the sky, each one perfect until it hits the ground. From what I heard, she went to California to start fresh. Good, says Sarah, with finality. That's what she needs. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. It read, "Congratulations on the official fresh start. Dinner sometime to celebrate?" Sarah read the message from over my shoulder. "You should," she says. "Catherine's all right." "Maybe," I say, though thinking of Catherine, I'm tempted to agree. It was snowing harder now, covering up the tire tracks and footprints. "Job offer," I say to Sarah. "Law firm in Boston. Fresh start. Are you going to go?" "Maybe. Lots of memories here." "Some of them good," she says. "We made it out, didn't we?" I received a text from Julia a little while later saying that Emily had tried to contact Tom again, but he had ignored her, and that everyone was doing a lot better since she left. "Much better," I say, showing Sarah. We finish our coffee in silence, watching the snow fall. She gets up to leave. "Boston or no Boston," she tells me, "you've got family now, permanent family." I walk her to her car. We pass by the restaurant where I met Emily and saw her first lies. There's a new sign up saying under new management. "Life's weird, huh?" Sarah says, looking up at the sign. "Or fair," I reply. I stood in my study, looking at the boxes I'd packed for a possible move. The cameras were gone, and the screens no longer showed hidden truths. My phone buzzed with a final text from Catherine. "No rush on dinner, but it's never too late for new beginnings." I gazed out at the falling snow, at the paths I hadn't yet decided to take. The weight of the surveillance equipment and the evidence files was gone, replaced by a sense of possibility. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Catherine. "Dinner sounds nice. Let's celebrate new beginnings." The snow continued to fall, blanketing Willow Creek in a fresh layer of white. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do next, whether or not to move to Boston, and whether or not to have dinner with Catherine. But for now, I was content to watch the snow erase the past, leaving a clean slate for new footprints, new stories, and new truths. I could see Sarah's house from my window, the warm glow of her kitchen lights spilling out into the snow. Across the street, Julia's car pulled into her driveway, the professor helping her carry groceries inside. Life went on, changed but unbroken. I turned away from the window, leaving Emily, Jake, Carl, and Tom behind. The evidence was gone, the cameras were off, and the truth had been told. All that was
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. but carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.